Part 1. I still remember the day I first met Jessica. It was a crisp autumn afternoon, the kind where the leaves crunched underfoot and the air carried that faint scent of bonfires. I was standing in line at a coffee shop, thumbing through emails on my phone when I heard her laugh behind me. It was light, musical, the kind of sound that made you look up just to see who it belonged to. I turned around and there she was wearing a green sweater that matched her eyes, holding a paperback novel in one hand, her cheeks flushed from the cool weather. She caught me looking and offered a sheepish little smile. "Sorry," she said. "I'm just laughing at myself. I spilled coffee on my book. Typical Monday." I smiled back. "At least it wasn't your laptop." She laughed again, and somehow that was it for me. One conversation led to another, and before I knew it, I was asking if she wanted to sit down and share a table. She said yes. Looking back now, I realize how easy it all was in the beginning. How natural it felt to fall into step with her, like we had known each other much longer than just a few hours. We talked about everything: favorite movies, embarrassing college stories, places we wanted to travel someday. It felt effortless. After that, we started dating. A year later, I proposed during a snowy weekend getaway in Vermont. She cried when I asked her, happy tears back then. We got married the following spring in a small ceremony, just close family and friends, and a garden blooming with wildflowers. She looked like something out of a dream walking down the aisle, and for the first time in my life, I understood what people meant when they said their heart could actually ache from happiness. The first few years of marriage were good. Sure, there were the usual growing pains. Merging two lives together is never seamless, but we were happy. Or at least I thought we were. 5 years later, we had just moved into a new apartment downtown, bigger, brighter, with a view of the river. Jessica had started a new job in marketing at a large firm, and I had recently been promoted at mine. Things should have been perfect. But somehow they weren't. There were little cracks forming, arguments about stupid things, silences that lasted a little too long, and nagging feeling that she wasn't really there even when she was sitting right next to me. I told myself it was just the stress of new jobs and moving, that we'd find our rhythm again. And then that rainy Saturday afternoon, I found her old phone. The discovery. It was tucked away in a drawer with a bunch of tangled chargers and receipts from years ago. I didn't even think much about it at first, just an old relic. But when I charged it up and saw that it still worked, curiosity got the better of me. There was no passcode, no lock screen. I clicked into the messages, expecting to find old chats with her college friends or maybe photos from before we met. Instead, I found the thread with D. At first, it was harmless, casual jokes, memes, then deeper conversations, complaints, confessions. Sometimes I feel like he doesn't even see me anymore. I'm tired of always being the one who tries. Even in bed, it's just not the same. My chest tightened as I read those words. This wasn't just friendship. This was emotional intimacy, the kind you share with someone you trust more than your own partner. I wanted to throw the phone across the room. I wanted to wake her up, demand answers, scream and rage and cry. But then I heard her laugh from the living room, laughing at something on TV, completely unaware of the storm raging inside me. I watched her from the doorway for a long moment. She looked so innocent, so normal. Maybe it was just harmless. Maybe it was just venting. Maybe, I turned off the phone, shoved it back in the drawer, and decided to let it go. Or at least I tried. Part 2. The work party. A few weeks passed. I tried to forget what I had seen. I buried myself in work, convinced myself that Jessica loved me and that we were just going through a rough patch. Then she mentioned the party. "It's just a work thing," she said one evening, stirring her coffee absent-mindedly. "You really don't have to come." "Why wouldn't I?" I asked, setting down my newspaper. She shrugged, not meeting my eyes. "It's boring. You wouldn't know anyone." I hesitated. Something about her tone bothered me, like she was trying too hard to be casual. "I'll come," I said finally, watching her reaction. Her smile was tight, forced. "Okay, sure." The night of the party, she spent longer than usual getting ready. I watched her from the doorway as she curled her hair and applied her makeup with careful precision. "You look beautiful," I said softly. She glanced at me in the mirror, offered a quick smile. "Thanks." We drove downtown in near silence. The only sounds, the hum of the engine and the occasional swipe of the windshield wipers against the glass. The party was on the rooftop of a trendy bar overlooking the city skyline. Lights strung overhead twinkled against the night sky, and a live band played soft jazz near the bar. At first it was nice. I chatted with a few of her coworkers, nursed a beer, tried to enjoy myself. Jessica, meanwhile, flitted from group to group like a butterfly, laughing, smiling, always just out of reach. And then I saw him. Tall, athletic build, messy dark hair, a confident grin that was almost too practiced. He was standing close to her, too close, laughing at something she said. I told myself not to jump to conclusions. Maybe he was just friendly. But then he touched her hand, a fleeting gesture, but intimate, familiar. I felt a slow burn of anger rising in my chest. I turned away, forced myself to join a conversation with two guys near the bar, tried to act normal. But every time I glanced over, they were together, laughing, whispering, glancing at me when they thought I wasn't looking. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I crossed the rooftop, my heart pounding in my ears. As I approached, I saw it clearly. He had his hand on her lower back, leaning in close, whispering something that made her giggle. Without thinking, I grabbed his shoulder and pulled him back a step. "Hey," I said sharply. He turned, and the look in his eyes, amused, almost condescending, made my blood boil. "Problem?" he asked coolly. "Yeah," I said, voice low. "That's my wife." He raised an eyebrow, gave a little mocking chuckle. Jessica stepped between us quickly, placing a hand on my chest. "Let's just go," she said under her breath, her eyes darting around to see if anyone was watching. I stared him down for another second before letting her pull me away. The drive home was silent. When we pulled into the parking lot of our building, I turned to her. "Who is he?" She sighed, as if I was being unreasonable. "His name is Dick. He's just a coworker." I barked a humorless laugh. "Dick? Seriously? And what exactly was that back there?" "Just coworkers, being a little too friendly." "You're making a big deal out of nothing," she snapped, finally showing some irritation. I stared at her, feeling like I was seeing her for the first time. Is he the D from the old phone? She froze. Just for a second, but it was enough. I didn't say anything else. I just got out of the car and headed inside. That night, after she fell asleep, I dug the old phone out of the drawer again. The messages were still there. I read them until my eyes blurred from exhaustion. Photos, flirty messages, confessions about how safe and understood he made her feel. She had told him things she never told me. Shared dreams, fears, hopes, complaints about me. It felt like 1,000 tiny cuts across my heart. I realized then that the woman lying next to me in bed was not the same woman I had married. Or maybe she was, and I had just never really seen it. The next evening, after another strained dinner, I set my fork down and looked at her across the table. "I know," I said simply. Her face paled. "Know what?" "I know about you and Dick." She opened her mouth, but no words came out. "I saw the messages," I continued. "The photos, everything." For a moment, she just stared at me, eyes wide and glassy. Then came the anger. "You went through my phone?" She exploded, pushing her chair back roughly. "You made me," I said quietly. "You made me doubt. You invaded my privacy." She shouted, "You had no right." I stood up too, unable to sit still anymore. I had every right. I had a duty to know if the person I share my life with is even still my wife. She cried then, angry, bitter tears, accusing me of not trusting her, of controlling her. I accused her of betrayal. The words flew between us like knives. There was no winner that night, only two broken people standing on opposite sides of a widening chasm. Part 3. The slow collapse. After that night, something fundamental between us changed. We stopped speaking about anything that mattered. The conversations became mechanical. "Did you pick up groceries? Are you working late tonight?" Nothing deeper. No laughter. No teasing. No comfort. Jessica started coming home later and later. She claimed it was late meetings or team outings, excuses that rang hollow every time she said them. I didn't bother asking anymore. I didn't want to hear another lie. Instead, I buried myself in work, stayed late at the office, ate dinner alone more often than not. I became a ghost in my own home, haunting the spaces we used to share. Sometimes I'd find her sitting on the balcony at night, staring out at the city lights, a glass of wine in her hand. I'd wonder if she was thinking of me or him. Probably him. The few times we tried to talk, it ended in shouting matches or bitter silence. There was no saving it. Whatever love we had once shared was slipping through our fingers, and neither of us seemed willing or able to hold on. The ultimatum. One Saturday morning, I couldn't take it anymore. We were sitting at the kitchen table, pretending to read, pretending everything was fine. I set down my coffee cup with a deliberate clink. "It's him or me," I said quietly. Jessica looked up startled. "What?" "You heard me," I said, meeting her eyes. "Dick. If you want this marriage, you cut him off. Completely. No friendship. No texts. Nothing." She stared at me, her face a mixture of anger and guilt and sadness. "I need to think about it," she said finally. I laughed bitterly. "If you have to think about it, then you already have your answer." She didn't argue. The end. A week later, she sat me down in the living room. The same living room where we'd once spent lazy Sundays cuddled up on the couch, binge-watching old sitcoms. Now it felt cold, alien. She twisted her hands nervously in her lap. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," she said, voice trembling slightly. I waited. "I don't think I'm in love with you anymore," she whispered. I felt like the ground had shifted under me, even though I had known deep down, I had known it still hit like a punch to the gut. "Are you sure?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "I'm so sorry. I never meant for it to happen. I never meant to hurt you." I stood up slowly, feeling numb. "Then there's nothing left to say," I said. "I'd packed a bag that night. Just a few essentials. I didn't trust myself to stay a minute longer." As I walked out the door, I paused, looking back at her. She didn't move, didn't beg me to stay, didn't even follow me to the door. She just sat there, crying quietly. And I knew, with a terrible finality, that it was truly over. The divorce. The next 6 months were a blur of paperwork, meetings with lawyers, and awkward, stilted conversations. We divided our assets with cold efficiency. There were no fights over who got what backslash or 2014. Neither of us had the energy. Jessica moved into a smaller apartment closer to her office. I stayed in ours until the lease ended, then found a place across town. The day the divorce was finalized, I sat alone in my car in the courthouse parking lot, staring at the papers. It felt surreal, like it hadn't really happened. 5 years of marriage reduced to a few signatures and a handshake. I didn't cry. I thought maybe I would. But all I felt was an aching emptiness. Life after. It's been a year now. Some nights I still wake up expecting to find her curled up next to me. Some mornings I still instinctively reach for 2 coffee mugs instead of 1. Old habits die hard. I heard through mutual friends that Jessica is still with Dick, or at least she was. I don't ask for details. I don't want to know. Sometimes I catch myself wondering if she ever regrets it, if she ever misses what we had. But mostly I just try to move forward. I've started seeing someone new, slowly, carefully. Trust is harder now. Love feels different backslash, 2014 heavier, more fragile. But I'm trying. Because despite everything, I still believe in love. I still believe in second chances backslash or 2014, maybe not with her, but with someone else. Someone who will choose me without hesitation. Someone who won't need to think about it. Reflections. Looking back, I realized the signs were there long before I found that old phone. The distance, the silence, the way she smiled more at her screen than at me. I just didn't want to see it. Love can blind you that way. Make you excuse the inexcusable, forgive the unforgivable. I don't hate Jessica. I don't even blame her completely. We both made mistakes. We both stopped trying. But emotional betrayal cuts deep, deeper than any knife. And even though the wounds have healed, the scars remain. They always will. Part 4, Memories of Better Days. Some nights, when the world is quiet and sleep refuses to come, I find myself drifting back to the beginning. The days when Jessica and I were just 2 foolish kids in love, certain we had beaten the odds. I remember our first road trip together. Driving up the coast, windows down, music blasting. She sang along loudly, off-key and unashamed, laughing when I tried to harmonize and failed miserably. We stopped at every ridiculous tourist trap along the way. Giant statues of lobsters, kitschy diners with neon signs, tiny souvenir shops where we bought matching t-shirts we would never wear again. We made promises then, whispered late at night in cheap motel rooms, our fingers intertwined under the covers. "I'll always choose you," she said once, half asleep. I'll always choose you too, I whispered back. Funny how forever can fit inside a moment so small you almost miss it. The turning point. I tried to fight for us. After that disastrous confrontation about the messages, there were days I wanted to believe we could fix it. That love was enough. I suggested counseling. She brushed it off. We're just different now, she said one night, sipping her wine. People change. I wanted to scream. Change wasn't a reason to give up, it was a reason to fight harder. But she didn't want to fight. And you can't win a war when your ally lays down their sword. The loneliness after she'd emotionally checked out was almost worse than the eventual separation. She was there physically, sharing meals, sharing a bed, but it felt like living with a stranger. Little things cut the deepest. The way she would flinch slightly when I touched her shoulder. The way she never laughed at my jokes anymore. The way her phone was always turned face down on the table. I found myself inventing reasons to stay late at work, pretending to be busy, pretending to have plans. Anything to avoid the suffocating silence of our apartment. I wondered if she did the same. The final conversation. One night, about a month before I moved out, we sat on opposite ends of the couch, the television playing a sitcom neither of us was really watching. I muted the TV and turned to her. "Do you love him?" I asked. She blinked, startled. "What?" "Dick, do you love him?" She looked away, her fingers twisting the hem of her sweater. "I don't know," she said finally. That hurt more than if she'd said yes, because it meant there was something real there. Something enough to make her doubt everything we had built together. I nodded slowly. "Then I think it's time," I said. She didn't argue. She didn't cry. She just sat there staring at the darkened screen while the silence swallowed us whole. Moving out. Packing was strangely easy. Most of the things that mattered couldn't be put in boxes anyway. Memories, promises, plans for a future that would never happen. I left the furniture. I left the framed photos. I'd even left my favorite coffee mug, the one she had bought me on our first trip together. I didn't want anything that reminded me of her, of us. As I closed the door behind me that final time, I stood there for a moment, hand on the doorknob. There was no dramatic goodbye, no tearful farewell, just the hollow sound of my footsteps down the hallway. Rebuilding. The months that followed were some of the hardest of my life. Loneliness was a constant companion, so was doubt. Was I not enough? Could I have fought harder? Was it my fault? I replayed every moment, every argument, every silence. Friends and family tried to help. They took me out for dinners, invited me over for holidays, called to check in. But healing is something you have to do alone. I threw myself into work. I started running again, something I hadn't done since college. I adopted a dog, a scruffy mutt from the shelter who licked my face and wagged his tail like I was the best thing in the world. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, life began to feel livable again. Not the same, never the same, but bearable. A year later. Now, a year later, I can honestly say I'm not angry anymore. The hurt is still there, sure. The betrayal still stings on bad days. But it doesn't define me. I started dating again, carefully, cautiously. I met someone through a friend, a woman named Claire who smiles with her whole heart and listens like every word matters. It's different this time, softer, more deliberate. I'm not rushing. I'm not trying to fill a void. I'm learning to trust again, one tiny step at a time. Lessons learned. If there's one thing I've learned from losing Jessica, it's this. Love isn't just about the grand gestures, the big promises. It's about the small choices you make every day. To stay, to listen, to fight, to choose each other over and over again. Jessica stopped choosing me long before she ever admitted it. Maybe I stopped choosing her too, in some small way I couldn't see. Either way, we lost each other. And that's a loss I'll carry with me forever, not as a wound, but as a reminder. A reminder of what love should be. And what happens when you stop fighting for it.